Hello, I'm so happy you're here. I'm glad you come to paint with me today. Today we are going to paint some lovely lupins in a vase. I'm probably going to do that a lot today. Um, these are really lovely, tall, vibrant colored flowers that I think you'll enjoy mixing the different colors and letting them blend. It's a little bit loose, which is perfect, so you don't have to be perfect at everything. And it makes for a lovely card. It makes for a lovely gift for someone, or you can simply frame it, put it on your desk, and enjoy it yourself. I hope you enjoy this. Thank you for coming to paint with me today. Okay, let's get started on our lovely lupins today. I've got most of my supplies set out. So I've got my Fabriano watercolor paper. I've got my Princeton brushes. They're my favorite brushes. They're the Velvetouch ones. So as a gal with dry hands, they've got a little bit of a grip to them, and I really, really appreciate that. Um, if you want to pause the video and take a sketch for your layout, you can. I'll also put a link below in the description so that you can simply download that and go from there if you like. I will, of course, put a full list of the exact colors and brands that I'm using to create this painting. And as well, I'll put a list of the supplies below and make sure that you've got all of those as well. But you don't have to use the exact same colors that I use. You can use your choice of colors, whatever you have on hand or more. And this is kind of a fun one to play around with the colors a little bit. Okay, so we're going to get started by starting with the blossoms themselves. And once you've got your stems in on your sketch, which I'm hoping you can kind of see there, yeah, okay, I think that's pretty good. You're actually going to flip your paper over and start at the bottom where it meets up with the vase. I'm going to do that a lot. So you start a little bit wider at the bottom, and then you get them a little bit more narrow at the top. So what we're going to use are C shapes. We're actually going to make little letter C's that curl in towards the stem of your lupin. I'll just show you what I mean. That are just little um, C's that curl forward and then backward toward the stem of your flower. That way it makes it look like the blossoms are going all the way around your stem. So we'll mix up a little bit of our color and we'll get started with our blossoms. So I'm going to mix up a little turquoise blue and a little bit of my mauve. And we'll get this kind of lovely pale blue purpley color, which I think is going to be lovely for our lighter color on this stem. I think it's going to be this middle stem here. Yeah, that one looks nice. So they'll start wider at the bottom and then get more and more narrow towards the stem as we get towards the top. And we'll make some C's that curl on both sides of our stem, and then we'll use a little bit of our mauve and we'll just touch that in there too. A little bit of purple and let them blend together. It makes for a nice little delicate blossom. It's very, very pretty and light. And they don't have to be perfect. You want them to sort of blend together a little bit and kind of enjoy the process as you're going along, which is quite nice. Now we'll just add a few more in here and it'll lovely little touches of the color and let them bloom together, which is cute. And we'll get that to come all the way down towards the top of our stem. Yeah. I like the way these two colors kind of come together. Very, very pretty. And lupins can be just about any color, so it's hard to kind of narrow down to one. once we get right down to the tippy top, we're going to get some dilute sap green and just touch a couple right at the top that are not quite open yet. I think that makes for a nice little touch at the top. And then I'll try and figure out which colors I'd like to do on the other ones so we can fill out our vase. So let's see. On our stems, I think I'll do this little curly guy over on the side here. And he's going to be sort of a maroony kind of mauve-y color. So I'm going to use a little bit of my magenta as a paler pink color. So dilute that down with a little bit of water, and then you can touch with a little bit of your magenta, Quinacridone magenta, and get that nice sort of pale color. And you want to start at the bottom where it's touching your vase a little, and make sure that it's a little bit wider at the bottom. Vase. I once had someone tell me a story that the way you say it is how expensive the item is. So it's vase until you get to a certain amount of money to pay for it, then it's a vase. I don't know. Maybe that's not true. I think it's funny. Anyway, we'll do some light mauve C's on this curly lupin on the side and touch with a little bit more mauve, sort of straight off the cake into this little curly guy, and follow along the stem as we curve around the side. Get a little narrower, and we'll put some of that light sap green, dilute sap green at the very top. Once I stop picking at the purple, of course, because I'm going to pick at it a bit more. There we go. A little bit of green. Now we've got our little curly guy in there. Yeah, I think I'll do this guy coming off the side on the other side. Yeah, so I think for this one, this is going to be my more purpley stem. So I'm going to mix a little bit of my Purple Lake with just a tiny bit of my Indigo, just to get a little bit more purpley there, but with a little bit of water so it's a little more dilute on the back end of it. And we'll start again wider at the bottom, and we'll get more narrow as we get towards the top. More C shapes. More C's. And we'll touch in with a little bit of the that darker purple as we come down, and let that blend together too, because that just makes such a nice little delicate effect. I like that a lot. And I know these kind of look a little bit flat at the moment, but we're going to go back in and do some finer details towards the end, and it'll actually give a little bit more dimension to your blossoms, and I think you'll really like that. But it'll be easy, I promise. You can do it. I believe in you. Now, almost down to the tip, and we'll get some more of our, wait, I got to pick at it a little bit more. Then we'll get some of our dilute sap green, and we'll put a little unopened tips on there. I think that'll be really nice. Yay! I like that. So this middle taller stem in here, I think it's going to be a paler pink one. And I think that'll help fill out a lot across our vase. Now I have 5 stems in my vase. You can have as many or as few as you like. It's entirely up to you. That's the fun part about being the artist. You get to decide. Your eye tends to like uneven numbers. So if it's too even, it doesn't look as right as if you had, say, 3 or 5 or 7. But again, it's entirely up to you. and he's got a little bit of a wavered curl at the top there. So we'll start wider at the bottom with our pale pink. So lots of water, a little tiny bit of magenta. And we'll start with our C's that work wide at the bottom and get closer towards the top. And then we can touch him with a little bit of the magenta right off the cake so that it's got a little bit of a nice blend to it too. Adds a little bit of variation then in your color. Yeah, pretty, pretty, pretty. I like that. And if it touches the guy next to him and it's blending together a little bit, that's okay. It's all good. Love is love. And we'll get that a little bit more narrow as we get towards the top. With that little bit of a curve, because where the lupins are quite tall, oftentimes they'll curve a little and tip a little. It's because they're top heavy. Kind of like the best of us. Yeah. So we'll work that down towards the top, making our little C's. There we go. Fill him out. I'm going to make him a little bit fatter, yeah. And then we'll get some of our dilute sap green and put some little unopened tips on the top. There we go. Lovely, lovely, tell your mother. Okay, so I think we'll go with this guy, our last little stem here. And this guy's going to be sort of a deeper mauve, deeper purpley, almost like a burgundy kind of color. There we go. A little bit darker still. That way there's a nice little variation in the 5 stems. Mix that with a little bit of water. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit more on the burgundy end of pink. So closer to magenta, but with a little bit of purple, yeah. Okay. And we'll tuck him in between. Yeah, that's a pretty color. I like that. There we go. It's a nice blend of the mauve and magenta together. It makes for a really nice, delicate lupin color. And then we'll touch with a little bit of our purple lake. And create some little purpley tips in there. And let it blend a little as we work our way down to the very tip of our stem. More C's. Oh, I like the way those colors blend together. That works really well. Yeah, almost down to the tip. So then we're going to get our dilute sap green and touch a few unopened tips at the top. There we go. Perfect. All right, so that's our 5 stems. And we'll let that dry completely. And we'll go on from there and we'll fill in some leaves around the bottom. Okay, so now that this is completely dry, we're going to get our leaf colors ready. So we're going to mix some of our sap green and some a little tiny bit of burnt umber to get this sort of a little bit more of an earthy bright green. I think that'll be really pretty. Lovely. Okay. And then some hooker's green light with a little bit of burnt umber, and you'll get this lovely dark earthy green. And there's our 2 colors. And that'll be lovely. And that'll fill in our foliage all around our stems. Lupins are really have unique looking leaves. They look like a star almost. Very, very pretty as they sort of come away from the center. They look really almost a star-shaped kind of. They have a sort of central point, but then the leaves blossom out all the way around. So they're quite lovely. I like the way they sort of fill right in. So we're going to fill in around our vase at the top here. And we're going to start with our stems so that we've got a little place to go. We want to make sure that there's some that are sort of tucked out over the top of the vase, and then some that might be tucked inside. So we'll get some of that lighter green that we've mixed, and we're going to start with this stem here, and we'll go from the bottom, and we're going to make a little break where the water line is and a little break at the top. So up to the water line, a little bit of a break, up to the top, and good. There we go. That's that stem there, and if you follow towards the center, it'll work really well. So this guy here, break at the water line, and all the way to the top. And this guy from the corner, and break at the water line, and all the way to the top. And load our brush up again, and this guy here, and break at the water line, all the way to the top. And last but not least, this guy here, break at the water line, and all the way to the top. So there's our stems. I think that'll look lovely. And you want to break there at the water line. That gives it that little bit more of dimension, which would be really pretty. So for our leaves, I'm going to start with sort of this center dot and then work out from there. It kind of helps position them. So there's our center dot. And then we're going to touch and press your brush down towards the paper and then lift up. So you get these lovely sort of long leafy shapes. So touch, press, and lift. And if you practice on a test sheet, that works really well too. So touch, press, and lift. And we'll move it around and do it a little bit more over here. It's a little bit too wet. We'll blend that in now. Press and lift. And yeah, I'll just pull that over here and a little bit in behind there. There we go. And we'll put a dot over here. Press and lift. Press and lift. There we go. A few more little leaves. And again, they don't have to be perfect. Leaves can be messy. I like having a test sheet around to try it on first, especially if it's something new. I'm going to fill some little guys in the back here, I think, just to fill that out a little bit, that little bit of white space. And press and lift. There we go. Nice. Okay. So we'll give our brush a wash and a little rinse, and we'll go in with our darker color. And it's okay if they're still wet and they're going to blend together a little bit. Again, that just adds for nice interest. So our little dot for the center, and touch and press and lift. And it doesn't have to be huge pressure. A little bit of pressure is all you need. There we go. Press and lift. And some narrower ones. Yeah, that's a little bit dark. A little bit dark. That's okay. It can be over the top. It can be in behind. There we go. And the little variety of color adds for some really nice interest. I like that. And a little bit of a guy in here, I think. Yeah. There we go. Lovely. Okay, so we'll let that dry completely. And make sure that that's really good and dry because you don't want to pick up too much color underneath. And then we'll get started with our vase and water on the bottom. Okay. So our stems and our leaves and everything is all completely dry. So we're going to work on our vase, and we're going to mix together a little tiny bit of our turquoise and a lot of water because you want kind of a very pale mix to give the idea that there's a vase there, but not, you know, kind of hit you over the head with it. So very light, very dilute turquoise, and that'll be our glass color. So we're going to paint that all the way around, inside the vase, over the flowers, over the stems, um, through the whole thing. And it's okay to be really loose about it. And you want to make sure that you're not scrubbing too hard because you don't want to pick up the stems and things, but you're going to very loosely push it around in between, even over your water line, and go in between your stems and in between your flowers and just above the little hump at the bottom. There we go. And you keep it nice and light and loose and very, very wet. Again, it's just to give the indication that the glass is there, not to actually like make it a colored piece of glass. Just tuck those ones in there. And we're going to do that little hump piece afterwards and make like a little shadow on it. I think that'll be... Okay, so we've got our vase filled in, and we're going to mix a fair bit of water with a little tiny bit of our indigo, and maybe just a touch of our hooker's green to get that kind of muted pale shade color that we're going to use on the edge of our vase, all the way around the edge. It looks kind of like that. Okay. Here we go. And we'll use our fine brush. And we'll go around the edges. And it's okay if it's still a little wet on the inside, because if it bleeds together, just makes it a more natural looking glass. And we'll up our bump a little bit at the bottom. And we'll just blend that out with a little bit of water so that it's not too harsh. There we go. And then down on the sides. Yeah. And a little bit of our clean water, and we're going to blend that out a little bit in the bump. There we go. Yeah, make that a little bit lighter. Yeah, I like that better. I don't want it to be too crisp, otherwise it looks like a weird edge. And you can see a little bit of the edge of your glass up here. There we go. And our water line, where the water meets the front of your vase. Very loose across the front. And don't worry if it looks a bit dark, because we're going to put a highlight on it at the end. I think that'll look really nice. Yeah. Here we go. We'll show you some highlight tricks at the end to get that to glow a little bit. And we'll let that dry. Okay, so we're going to mix a little bit of more turquoise into our water to make it a watery color, with a little tiny touch of indigo, and that's our watercolor. So to make a little bit of a difference between the water area and the top of the water that you see the edge of, we're going to make it a little bit lighter under the water by wetting the area first. And again, don't scrub too much because you don't want to pick up your stems, but you're going to wet that all over that area underneath your water line. And then we're going to add some color. So we'll just touch that color then into the area around the bottom. And again, if it picks up a little bit of the stem, that's okay, because then that's just a little bit of the reflection, which is lovely. And we'll go across there on the bottom. Nice and loose. There we go. And a little bit of more indigo into that blue mixture that we made. And we'll put that across the top of our water line that's in more of a shadow. So you can see how that's a little bit darker, because it's wet on dry versus wet on wet. So there's no blending out with the water. And it makes that little bit of difference, adds that little bit of extra. And that little bit of white space between the two sections is quite nice. Now I'm going to add the back corners of the vase. It helps if I have some ink on there. Just to give the indication that it's a square vase. So just a little bit of that color. There we go. That's a little better. But not so much that it's overpowering. And there's your dimension. A little bit underneath this bump here at the bottom, I think. Just to set that off a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So our whole painting is quite dry, which is really good. We're going to add some final details. And we're going to start with some details in our blossoms. So again, we're going to flip that page around. Has to come with a whistle. Has to have sound effects. We're going to add some of this original tone, but a little bit darker. In that sort of a maroony mauvey color. Yeah. And then some pink for the other one. And the second one, that middle guy, we're going to use some more of our purple lake. Yeah. And this real pale fellow is going to have some of that nice purpley blue. And add that in there. Mix that in there. There we go. Oh yeah, that's nice. That'll add some nice depth. And then our last guy over here on the end is our deeper purple. Yeah, almost straight off the cake. That'll be lovely. We'll get that to layer in. So you have that nice light background and then the deeper colors on top will add that nice little bit of depth like you're going all the way around the stem. It'll be lovely. So we'll start with this curl guy on the end. And again, we're going to do C shapes and purposeful C's. So we're doing purposeful petals. And still leave a little bit of space so you can definitely see the delicate wash you've got underneath. There we go. And then we'll do our tall boy with our pink. Again, purposeful C's, purposeful petals. That's harder to say, purposeful petals. Yeah. A little bit loose. And again, it's okay if they're touching the guy next to them and they blend a little. But you can see how that's adding a nice little bit of depth then to our blossoms. Come all the way down the bottom and a little bit narrower at the bottom, of course, or well, the top. Yeah. And wash and rinse, and then we'll go with our purpley color, purpley mauve. And again, purposeful C's, purposeful petals. Yeah, that looks really good. I really like how those colors blended together in that one. Turned out very, very pretty. So this is probably a great time to do my usual plug. If you're enjoying these tutorials and you're having a bit of fun trying these new techniques and new designs out, I would love it if you would like and subscribe to my channel and leave me a comment in the spot below. I'm really, really happy you're here, and a gal on the East Coast really, really appreciates any and all support to my channel and to me. Thank you so much. And as we keep going, we're adding a bit more of our darker purpley blue to this lovely stem. And we'll keep doing our purposeful C's all the way down, purposeful petals. I'm going to get an expert. I'm going to become an expert at saying that by the end of this. Yeah. And then we're going to do a little bit more of the dark purple. And that's going to add a little bit more on this guy. There we go. Yeah. And we'll put some deep purple right on the end here with this guy who's a little bit darker again. It kind of brings him forward a little bit in the arrangement of the blossoms. That looks nice. There we go, all the way down to the bottom. Perfect. All right. So that's all of our details for our blossoms. And we'll go ahead and add a little bit more detail to our leaves using the same colors that we used before, the sap green mixed with a little bit of burnt umber and the hooker's green mixed the same way. Just adds a little bit more depth then to our leaves. Yeah. Almost like they've got a little bit of a fold to them because there's a little bit of a crease there. And it'll sort of fill out around the bottom of our blossoms and be really pretty, I think. You don't want to overpower your blossoms because they're your main focus. But, you know, I'm going to add a little bit of dark down here on the stems. And then you got to figure out who's in front of whom. There we go. That deepens them out a little bit. A little bit of our dark. And these guys. It's a little bit darker than I'd like it to be. I'm going to put a little water on there and just back that off a little bit. Yeah. You can always blend it out. Don't worry. Watercolors have a reputation for being so unforgiving, but there's all kinds of things you can do. Blend that out like so. Yeah, that's better. And a little bit more of the dark over here on the side. That'll kind of balance out over here. Yeah, that works. So you've got just a little bit of space there where there's between the edge of the top of the vase and between the leaves there. So I'm going to add a couple of little blossoms, I think, that are in behind the glass there. Yeah. So just a little bit of that same blossom color and a little bit muted and a little bit loose because the glass is going to diffuse them a little bit. So they, again, they don't have to be perfect. Just a little loose, but just like kind of an indicator of the fact that the petals actually kind of come down a little bit further than the edge of the glass. And we will let that dry completely. So you've got a couple of options to put some highlights there on your watercolor. You can use a regular gel pen, which works really well. You can also use Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, very, very popular, works beautifully. What I have is a little bit of opaque white ink from Copic, and that's what I'm going to use for mine, and it's wonderful stuff. So I'm going to use my rigger brush, my long brush, get a little white ink on there, and load it up. So I've got a nice little bead. I'm going to go right across my water line where it meets the glass. Just like that. There we go. So it creates that, just that little bit of a highlight, which is pretty. And then a little bit in our bump because there's a little bit of light caught in there as well. Make sure I got that all filled in. I really like the white against that. Yeah, a little bit more in our bump. There we go. And just where the top edge of the vase is. It's expensive now, so we're going to call it a vase. There we go. Right in front of the petals that are just behind it. Behind the glass. Yeah. There we go. That looks nice. Now, our painting is completely finished. This is the perfect time for you to sign your name with a great deal of pride and brag to all your friends, hey, I did this. I did this. And enjoy. And I hope you enjoyed painting with me today. I really enjoyed painting with you. And I can't wait to see you next week.